Hey there, it's Marlene. In this video, I'm going to be talking about this camera monitor, the Godox GM6S Pro. Now, this was probably the most surprising piece of gear I've ever tested. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why. Godox sent this to me to review, but I've had it for a long time and I hesitated to do my review right out of the gate. And the reason is, I'd never used a camera monitor before. But over the last couple of months, I've tried to use it for photography and video, and I've come to rely on it, especially when I'm shooting these YouTube videos. Now in this video, I'm not just gonna list off a bunch of specs like most YouTubers do. You can look those up yourself, and I will leave a link in the video description below. What I'm mostly gonna talk about is some of the menu items of the monitor and some of the ways that I used it. I'm going to go over some of the settings in this monitor. I don't use all of it, but I use some of them, and it took me a while to wrap my head around those, like any piece of new technology. There's two versions of the kit. I got the one with the cables, and it comes with 3 cables, and I can attach it to the S9, the G9 Mark II, and the S1 Mark II, so that I can use this monitor with different cameras. So if you do get this kit, make sure either you already have a cable or you get it with the cables included. So one of the advantages, of course, of using a camera monitor is that everything is so much bigger than your rear LCD screen. Now, if you don't see everything mirrored exactly, what you need to do is go into the menus on your camera, and you're going to look for the HDMI recording output. And when you go into that menu, you want the info display to be on. Okay, so if it's not on, you will not see everything that's on the LCD on the monitor. Let's just take a little peek at the top of the monitor, and you can see that there are 5 function buttons. There's a back button, and this is actually the sort of the menu button, so you push that down or roll it. And the side of the monitor is where the power switch is. Here's the USB input. On the back, of course, we have the battery. And on the other side, we have our HDMI out, and that is for the camera control cable. We also have a remote, and we have an audio jack. The audio jack is super handy, especially if you're using a camera like the Lumix S9 and you need to monitor your sound. So to get the menu activated, you just push the menu button at the top, and you can see that we have a series of menus here. To roll through them, rotate the button at the top, and it will go down to the next menu. Now, when you press it in, so it's a bit of a spring-loaded switch here, it will activate the menu that you happen to be on. Now, right now you can see that focus assist is on, and I have basically focus peaking. That's what that means. But I can also turn it off by touching the back of the screen. I can show my zebras. I can go down to each of these menus by touching or by moving the menu button. So right now I'm just rolling this a little bit, and it has kind of like click stops that you can feel. So each of these menus, of course, has sub-menus, and I don't use all of them, but I'll show you the ones I use. I sometimes use focus assist. You can change the color of your focus peaking to whatever you want, and you can turn it off through here, or you turn it off through the switch up here. Zebras has to do with your exposure, and I usually like my zebras on at 85 IRE, and zebras will tell you when your exposure is bumping into blown out highlights. If you're into video, you will probably like waveforms. I do not use waveforms. You can load LUTs into this monitor as well, and there is a memory card underneath, which I will show you after this section. I do not use LUTs on this thing. Okay, assist is something that I do use a couple of things in here, and one of them is screenshot. If you choose screenshot, what it will do is, say I'm doing a demonstration, I can make a screenshot of whatever's on my monitor, and it's good for educational purposes or for me to remember how I had things set up when I'm doing a photo shoot or a video shoot. Unfortunately, it doesn't do video screenshots, which I wish it did, because then I could do like all sorts of demonstrations and show you exactly what I'm seeing on the camera while I'm taking photos and videos. But anyway, here's screenshot setup. And when I'm ready for a screenshot, you can see there's a little shutter button icon here. And I just click that and it will take a screenshot of whatever's happening. Now it does take a few seconds for this to happen. I'm still waiting, and there's a preview of our screenshot there, and we are done. Now, of course, it's a bit boring. It's my blue wall. When you want to get rid of screenshot, you just hit the X up at the top right corner, and it is gone. So let's go back into the menu. If you use anamorphic lenses, it has de-squeeze. You can put a center marker in. Safety markers, that has to do with your borders. So now you can see that we have a safety marker, which is the yellow line, and we have a center marker in here as well. I don't see the center marker or the frame on my camera LCD. I only see it on the monitor. Okay, basics. One of the things that I use in basics is false color. False color is very handy when you're trying to judge exposure, especially if you're perhaps shooting outdoors. And you can see that the false color changes as my exposure changes. You can also view in monochrome. There's an audio meter as well. Another thing I use quite a bit is zoom. The time I used zoom was when I was shooting astrophotography. And the great thing about this monitor, at night, it is perfect for astro because it's so much easier to focus with the monitor than with the LCD screen. And the reason is that you can really zoom in on the stars. Display, you can change the brightness, contrast, and saturation, sharpness, RGB, and reset. So we'll just reset it, yes. You also want to make sure you're using the proper color space. And I think I'm just going to stick it to origin. I don't think it's completely accurate, and I'm sure there's ways that you can set it up to be completely accurate. But honestly, I use this LCD more for just basic exposure, using the false color, and also for focusing and composition. And then, of course, you have your system, and you can check if there's firmware updates. You have to put the firmware update on a memory card that goes into the monitor and load it that way. If there's any menus that you like to use a lot and you don't want to go and menu dive, you can go down here into System and go to Shortcut. And what that allows you to do is program the F keys on the top here. So those are like function buttons. And you can see here that each of them has a different feature. So the first F1 is camera control. What that means is that when you touch this screen, you will control your camera. Now you need a separate cable for this, and I have ordered that cable, and I'm just waiting for it to arrive. F2 is LUT switch, F3 is focus assist, F4 is false color, and F5 for me is screenshot. So here I have camera control off and on. Here I have the LUT switch. Focus assist, of course, is like focus peaking, and false color. To access the memory card slot, you have to go underneath the monitor. You won't need a huge SD card. I've just got an old 2 gig card kicking around that I'm using because the things that you put on and off this are not very large, like your LUTs and your screen captures if you do any. Now, I didn't test the monitor too much with wildlife and birds unless you consider the low-hanging fruit of magpies and squirrels, but apparently squirrels are all the rage now with vloggers. It's kind of tricky to hand hold the camera if you have a super telephoto lens, as well as the monitor when you're shooting things like birds. It's much easier to keep this whole setup on the tripod so that you get steadier shots. Now, what's in the box, you wonder? Well, The kit I got was the kit 2, and it comes with a hood, which is very handy. If I can figure out how to open it up here. There you go. It comes with a hood that snaps on. It has some cables with it, and this allows you to attach the monitor to your HDMI input of your camera. Now the cold shoe mounts on 3 different sides of the monitor, so the top and bottom, and one of the sides. And that makes it handy if you want to rig up your monitor on different angles on your cage. And the nice thing about this cold shoe mount is that it swivels and tilts very easily. You just lock it down. So it tilts and it swivels. So if you need to show someone else on your set, you can just tilt it, or if you're shooting from a different angle, maybe you're not standing right behind your camera, so you can tilt this. And actually, you could take it off camera too, because it is just a cold shoe, and you could wire it up and hold it in your hand if you really wanted to, or get someone else to hold it for you. Now you can mount the monitor horizontally or vertically, and why would you mount it on the vertical side of the monitor? Well, maybe you want to throw the monitor on the side of your rig, not on the top. Maybe you have a big microphone on the top or something like that. So you can see here that the S1 Mark II is quite rigged up now. And I did buy a cage for this camera. And one of the reasons I did buy a cage is I had an L bracket, but it didn't allow me access to the battery door or the memory card slot. Now the rig I got has a NATO rail on it, so I got a simple top handle to go with it. And the thing about the top handle, it just makes it much easier to carry, especially with the heavier camera and lens. And if you're shooting, I find that the monitor is like at eye level, and you can go up or down. And if you point the camera down, you know, you can tilt the monitor the way you need to see it. And I just find, like, for shooting video, I find it's much more steady. And I mean, holding it like this is like super awkward, and it's heavy, and it gets heavy on your hand after a while. Whereas this way, I don't know, I just kind of like how I can kind of two-hand it, or just one-hand it and push my hand forward, push my arm forward to do some shooting. So yeah, I love this sort of rig with all this stuff on it. I'm a total addict now. Geez, I might become a videographer one day. Oh yeah, and it works for photos really well too. And here's another tip. You can use this shutter button. I don't know if you see it down here, but if you have a Lumix S1 Mark II, there's a shutter button on the front. And so if you're holding this, you just push the shutter and we're rolling. And you don't need to change hands and push this shutter button. Although if you're left-handed, that would work too. So one of the biggest advantages of shooting with a camera monitor is that it's bigger. And a secondary advantage is when I'm shooting myself on video, and this little flip screen is out, which is great, don't get me wrong, but if I'm standing on this side of the camera, I can't see the flippy screen, and I can't see if I'm in the frame properly or if I'm in focus. Now, I don't need this handle on here. The monitor does attach to the hot shoe. So don't feel you need to buy all this rigging stuff. You don't even need a cage. So here's what it looks like on the hot shoe, and you can see that it's much more compact. And this is basically how I use it when I'm shooting in the studio, but of course it's on the Lumix S9 when I'm doing that. There's 3 different ways to supply power to the monitor, and the one that I prefer the most is the battery. So this is, like I said, a Sony NP-F, and I've got a 750 battery. The other way is there's a DC input here, and you can just plug it directly into your wall, but you would have to purchase a DC input, and I just used one from an old hard drive that I had. And it also has USB input and for power, and you can use a power bank for that. But like I said, my favorite method is actually the battery. I feel it's the most portable and nothing's moving around. Even with a power bank, You just have too much stuff dangling off of it. So this is nice and compact. So there's no fan in this monitor, but these areas here are like heat sinks. Now they get warm, which is actually kind of an advantage when shooting out in the cold, which I have done with this monitor. They haven't overheated on me. Mind you, I have not taken it out in like super hot weather. Just used it indoors and in the cold. Now this was probably the most surprising piece of gear I've ever tested. And by surprise, I mean surprised that I could figure it out and surprised that I loved it so much. Now in the future, I will be using it more for photography. I did test it doing astrophotography twice, and I really enjoyed it for that. Anyhow, let me know your thoughts in the comments if you've used this monitor, if you've used any monitor, and what you like or dislike about it.